A couple disappeared in Death Valley, vanishing without a trace in the unforgiving desert. But 15 years later, hikers stumble upon a baffling clue, and what they discover changes everything. The morning sunlight streamed through the kitchen window, casting a golden glow on Lauren Richards as she methodically checked items against her meticulously organized list. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a practical braid, revealing the determined expression on her face as she packed emergency rations into her hiking backpack. Water purification tablets, emergency blanket, first aid kit, she murmured, placing each item with precision born from years of outdoor adventures. From the backyard came the sound of laughter. Lauren paused, a smile softening her features as she glanced through the window to see her husband Tyler demonstrating how to use a compass to their 5-year-old daughter. Tyler's short brown hair caught the light as he knelt to Abby's level, his patience evident as the little girl's golden curls bounced with excitement. "See how the needle always points north?" Tyler explained, his engineer's mind naturally breaking down complex concepts for his daughter. "No matter where we go, it helps us find our way home." Abby's face scrunched in concentration as she carefully held the instrument. "Will you and Mommy use this in the big desert?" Tyler nodded, wrapping a protective arm around her small shoulders. "We sure will, along with maps and GPS. Explorers always have backup plans." Later that morning, the family pulled into the driveway of Michael and Sarah Donahue's suburban Minneapolis home. Lauren's parents had agreed to watch Abby during the couple's anniversary trip to Death Valley National Park. As Tyler unloaded the overnight bag containing Abby's favorite stuffed animals and books, Michael Donahue stepped onto the porch, his military posture still evident despite his 62 years. "Let me see that itinerary again," Michael requested, following Lauren into the kitchen where she laid out a detailed printout on the table. Michael studied the document with the thoroughness of his former Marine training. "You've got enough water. July temperatures out there can hit 120 degrees. 6 gallons in the car, Dad," Lauren assured him, pointing to the supplies list. "Plus emergency rations, first aid kit, satellite phone backup. We've researched everything." "And you'll check in every evening?" Michael pressed, his concern visible in the lines around his eyes. Lauren squeezed her father's hand. "Promise. We'll be back for Abby's birthday on the 20th. It's only 4 days." On the front porch, Lauren knelt before her daughter, pulling her into an embrace that lasted longer than usual. Abby's small hands presented 2 colorful friendship bracelets made from threads and beads. "I made these for you and Daddy," she announced proudly. "So you remember me in the desert." Lauren carefully tied the bracelet around her wrist, her throat tightening with unexpected emotion. "We could never forget you, sweetheart. We'll be back for your birthday party, and Daddy promises to take lots of pictures of the beautiful rocks." "Bring me a pretty stone for my collection," Abby requested solemnly. Tyler knelt beside them, accepting his matching bracelet. "The prettiest one we find, I promise." At Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport, the couple checked in their specialized hiking backpacks, Lauren double-checking their boarding passes, while Tyler sent one last selfie to Sarah's phone. Their faces were alight with anticipation, the excitement of seasoned adventurers embarking on a journey they had planned for years. "Death Valley, finally," Lauren beamed, squeezing Tyler's hand as they walked toward security. "Happy anniversary to us." 2 days later, under the merciless Nevada sun, Lauren meticulously checked their water supplies, while Tyler inspected every inch of the red Jeep Wrangler they had rented in Las Vegas. The vehicle would be their lifeline in one of the most inhospitable environments in North America. "All set," Tyler announced, closing the hood. "Ready for adventure, Mrs. Richards?" Their first stop was the Furnace Creek Visitor Center, where they officially registered their planned routes with park staff. The center's air conditioning offered blessed relief from the oppressive heat outside. At the information desk, Ranger Diane Martinez looked up from her computer as the couple approached. "First time in Death Valley?" she asked, noting their eager expressions despite the sweat beading on their foreheads. "Been planning this trip for years," Tyler confirmed, spreading out their map. Diane pointed to the weather forecast displayed on the wall. We're expecting temperatures above 120 degrees this week. I strongly recommend avoiding long hikes during daylight hours. Lauren nodded, diligently jotting down Diane's suggestions in a small weatherproof notebook. We'll do our exploring in the early morning and evening. We've been training for the heat. That afternoon, they stood at Zabriskie Point, the undulating golden badlands stretching before them like a magnificent alien landscape. Lauren spread her arms wide against the breathtaking backdrop, her gray compression top contrasting with the warm tones of the desert as Tyler captured the moment with his camera. "I can't believe we're finally here," Lauren breathed, her face flushed with both heat and happiness. Back in their air-conditioned Jeep, Lauren sent the photos to her family, her fingers quickly typing, "Vista incredible. Can't believe the colors of this place." Later that evening, as the punishing sun finally began its descent, Lauren sent one final message to her sister Rebecca. "Going to explore an unmarked trail a local guide recommended, back in 2 days. Cell signal will be weak, don't worry." Rebecca's response came quickly. "Which trail? Be safe." But Lauren never saw it. 5 days later, Michael and Sarah exchanged increasingly worried glances as they prepared for Abby's birthday party. The cake with 5 pink candles sat untouched on the kitchen counter, while Michael made yet another call that went straight to voicemail. "Where are they, Michael?" Sarah whispered, arranging presents on the table while keeping her voice low enough that Abby wouldn't hear from the living room. "I don't know," he replied, tension evident in his tight jaw. This isn't like Lauren at all. When Abby padded into the kitchen for the 10th time that hour, her expectant face fell, seeing only her grandparents. "When are Mommy and Daddy coming? They promised to be here for my cake." Michael stepped onto the porch to make one more call, this time to the hotel in Furnace Creek. His knuckles whitened as he gripped the phone, listening to the receptionist's words. "I'm sorry, sir. They never returned to check out, but we found their belongings still in the room." While hanging up the phone with trembling hands, Michael looked at his granddaughter innocently playing in the garden and made an immediate decision. "Sarah, take care of Abby. I'm catching the next flight to Las Vegas. Our children are lost in the deadliest desert in America." Michael raced through the Las Vegas airport terminal, his single backpack slung over his shoulder and exhaustion etched across his face. Despite having barely slept since discovering his daughter and son-in-law were missing, adrenaline kept him moving with singular purpose. He paused only briefly at the gift shop to purchase a detailed map of Death Valley, spreading it open even as the cashier made change. 13,000 square miles, he muttered, tracing the vast expanse with his finger. His military training kicked in automatically. Assess the situation, identify resources, establish a search grid. But the enormity of the terrain made his heart sink. 3 hours later, Michael stood at the information desk of Furnace Creek Visitor Center, the same place Lauren and Tyler had checked in just days before. The air conditioning was a stark contrast to the furnace-like heat outside, where the dashboard thermometer of his rental car had registered 118 degrees. "These are my daughter and son-in-law," Michael said, sliding photos across the counter. "They were here 5 days ago and never returned to their hotel." The same ranger who had welcomed Lauren and Tyler, Diane Martinez, studied the photos with growing recognition. "Yes, I remember them. They seemed very prepared, unlike many tourists. The woman took notes on everything I said." She frowned. "They mentioned plans to visit Badwater Basin and Zabriskie Point, but nothing about extended backcountry hiking." Michael's next stop was the Inyo County Sheriff's Department, where Sergeant Jeff Williams listened intently as Michael detailed the couple's last known communications. "My daughter's last message mentioned an unmarked trail recommended by a local guide," Michael explained, his voice steady despite his inner turmoil. "She said they'd be back in 2 days. Williams, a desert law enforcement veteran of 15 years, nodded grimly as he filled out a missing persons report. "Unfortunately, this happens more often than you'd think. Death Valley doesn't forgive mistakes." He looked up from his paperwork. "But most missing hikers are found within 48 hours. At the hotel, Michael stood silently in the room where Lauren and Tyler had stayed. Their return clothes were still neatly folded on the bed, Lauren's toiletries arranged in the bathroom. Her brush still had blonde strands caught in the bristles. Everything spoke of people intending to return. An hour later, Michael found himself in a small operations room at the sheriff's post, where Williams had spread a large topographical map across the table. Death Valley has more than 13,000 square miles, Williams explained, drawing circles around key areas. We need to be strategic. First priority is locating their vehicle. By early afternoon, helicopter search teams were dispatched, their rotors battling the superheated air as they methodically scanned the vast terrain below. Inside one chopper, the pilot squinted through dark sunglasses, the temperature gauge on his instrument panel reading 122 degrees. "How long can someone survive out there?" Michael asked, voice raised over the rotor noise. "Without water? Less than a day in this heat," the pilot answered bluntly. "With proper supplies and shelter, maybe a week." Suddenly, one of the spotters leaned forward, pointing emphatically. "There, by that rock formation, something red." The helicopter banked sharply, circling lower. Against the pale beige landscape, the red Jeep Wrangler stood out like a drop of blood on sand. 30 minutes later, Michael and Sergeant Williams approached the abandoned vehicle on foot. It was parked neatly at what appeared to be a trailhead, locked and undisturbed. There were no signs of struggle or damage. Williams used a specialized tool to unlock the driver's door. Inside, Tyler's cell phone sat in the center console, its battery completely dead. In the trunk, 3 gallons of water remained untouched, along with emergency supplies, a concerning discovery that suggested the couple hadn't planned for an extended absence from their vehicle. A forensic technician connected a device to the Jeep's GPS system, downloading its data. The last programmed destination was an area called Coffin Canyon, he reported, looking up at Williams. It's a remote location on the western side of the park. Michael's stomach nodded at the ominous name. Back at the expanded search command post, topographical maps of Coffin Canyon and surrounding areas were spread across multiple tables. Volunteer search teams received assignments while dogs were prepared for scent tracking. Michael studied each map meticulously, looking for any clue to where his daughter and son-in-law might have gone. By late afternoon, Patricia Richards arrived, her eyes red-rimmed from crying and lack of sleep. She carried a folder containing detailed information about her son's hiking habits, previous routes, and outdoor preferences. "Tyler always marks his trail with small stone cairns," she explained to the search coordinator. "And Lauren keeps a detailed journal of their hikes. If they left markers, they'll be deliberate." As teams deployed into the field, Michael walked alongside Ranger Chief Howard Torres, who pointed toward distant canyon formations shimmering in the heat. "Even experienced hikers can get disoriented here," Torres explained. "The terrain is deceptive. What looks like a gentle slope from a distance can be a sheer drop, and these dry washes can flood in minutes if there's rain anywhere in the watershed." The search teams worked until dusk, when the brutal heat finally began to subside. Michael watched the sunset paint the mountains blood red as exhausted searchers returned to the command post. Their faces told him everything before Williams approached with a grave expression. "No sign of them yet," the sergeant said quietly, "but we've only covered about 20% of the primary search area. We'll resume at first light." Michael nodded, his military discipline holding his emotions in check. "I'll be ready." Just as Williams turned to leave, a radio crackled to life. The sergeant listened intently, his expression changing. He turned back to Michael, lowering his voice. "Mr. Donahue," Williams said, "we just received information from another hiker who claims he saw your son-in-law, alone and appearing disoriented, near an area called the Grotto, miles away from the Jeep. But there's no sign of your daughter." Michael's heart pounded as he rushed toward the grotto at dawn, pushing ahead of the search team despite Sergeant Williams' protests about safety protocols. The sergeant jogged to catch up, his tactical gear jingling. "Mr. Donahue, you need to stay with the group. The terrain here is treacherous, and we can't risk another person going missing." Michael barely slowed his pace. "That's my son-in-law out there. If he's disoriented, he'll respond better to a familiar face." They reached the meeting point where Gregory, the hiker who had reported seeing Tyler, waited with two park rangers. The man from San Diego shifted uncomfortably as the search team approached, his hiking boots kicking at the dusty ground. "Can you show us exactly where you saw him?" Williams asked, unfolding a detailed map. Gregory squinted at the map, then at the calendar on a ranger's clipboard. His expression suddenly changed. "Wait a minute, I think I'm confusing my dates." He pointed at the calendar, counting backward. "That was the previous week. I'm mixing up my hiking days." Michael's momentary hope collapsed into crushing disappointment. He turned away, hands clenching into fists as he struggled to maintain composure. The false lead felt like a physical blow, stealing the breath from his lungs. Back at the command center, Williams tried to reassure him. "This happens in almost every search, Mr. Donahue. We follow every lead, knowing many won't pan out. But each eliminated possibility narrows our search area." Meanwhile, in Chicago, Rebecca Donahue Garcia sat in her apartment, the blue light of her laptop illuminating her determined face as she created a Facebook page titled, "Find Lauren and Tyler Richards." She uploaded recent photos of the couple, details of their last known whereabouts, and descriptions of their vehicle and equipment. "My sister and brother-in-law are experienced hikers," she wrote. "They wouldn't have gone off trail without good reason. Please share this page with anyone who might have been in Death Valley National Park last week." Within 48 hours, the page had over 15,000 shares. By the end of the week, volunteers began arriving at Death Valley from neighboring states, some traveling from as far as Oregon and Colorado, drawn by Rebecca's heartfelt pleas and compelling description of the missing couple. Michael converted his hotel room into an improvisational headquarters, with maps covering every wall. He established a meticulous search routine written on a whiteboard, dividing each day into precise segments: morning briefing, field search, afternoon data collection, evening planning for the next day. The military discipline gave him purpose and kept despair at bay. In Minneapolis, Sarah held Abby as the little girl sobbed into her shoulder. "Why don't Mommy and Daddy call? Did they forget my birthday?" The child's questions became increasingly difficult to answer as days passed with no news. "They're having trouble with their phones, sweetie," Sarah explained, her voice steady despite her breaking heart. "Grandpa is looking for them right now." On the 7th day of the search, a sudden summer storm swept through Death Valley, forcing search teams to scramble for shelter as dry washes transformed into raging torrents within minutes. Michael watched from beneath a rocky overhang as the rain hammered the parched earth, thinking of Lauren and Tyler potentially caught in this deluge. The following morning, Sergeant Williams called a strategy meeting at the sheriff's post, unveiling new maps with expanded search grids. "We've covered the most probable areas based on their vehicle location and hiking experience," he said, his voice grave. "Now we need to consider the possibility that this might not have been just an accident." The word hung in the air like a thundercloud. Michael's jaw tightened. "What are you suggesting?" "Nothing specific yet," Williams replied carefully. "But in cases where experienced hikers disappear without using their emergency supplies, we have to examine all scenarios." That evening, Patricia sat with a group of volunteers around a campfire at the base camp. The circles under her eyes testified to sleepless nights, yet she spoke animatedly about Tyler's previous adventures. Once in Patagonia, she told them, he got separated from his group for 2 days. He found his way back using only the stars as guidance. He's resourceful. If anyone can survive out there, it's Tyler, and Lauren is just as capable. At dawn each morning, Michael walked alone, approaching tourists with photos of Lauren and Tyler, his determination almost feverish. "Have you seen this couple? They disappeared a week ago in the park." Back in Minneapolis, Sarah entered Abby's bedroom to find the child finally asleep, clutching one of Lauren's t-shirts. On the nightstand was a growing collection of colorful stones that Abby had started gathering for when Mommy comes home. Patricia often found herself drawn to Death Valley's sunsets, watching the fading light transform the barren landscape into a canvas of purples and golds. "I understand why Tyler wanted to come here," she told a volunteer one evening. "There's something almost spiritual about this place." After a full week of intensive searching, the captain of the sheriff's department called Michael into his office. "Mr. Donahue, I need to be straightforward with you. We cannot maintain this level of operation indefinitely. We'll continue searching, but we need to scale back resources." Michael's controlled facade finally cracked. "You don't understand," he said, his voice trembling with emotion. "If we reduce the search now, we're abandoning my daughter and son-in-law to death." That night, back in his hotel room, Michael pored over the last photos Lauren had sent, studying every detail for the 100th time. He zoomed in on Tyler's face, noticing how happy they looked, unaware of what awaited them. Then something caught his eye in Tyler's sunglasses, a reflection he hadn't noticed before. He enlarged the image further, his hand suddenly steady. Reflected in Tyler's dark sunglasses, partially visible but unmistakable, was the image of an unknown man who didn't appear in any other photo, someone who might have been the last person to see the couple alive. Michael stared at the reflection in Tyler's sunglasses, his hands trembling as he zoomed in further on his tablet. The unknown man's features were partially obscured by shadow, but a bearded face and wide-brimmed hat were unmistakable. Someone had been with them, someone who wasn't mentioned in any of their messages. The next morning, Michael burst into the operations center, projecting the enhanced image onto a wall. "Look, someone was with them," he said, pointing with unsteady fingers at the reflection. "This could be our missing piece." Sergeant Williams leaned closer, squinting at the grainy image. "You're right. There's definitely someone there." A digital imaging specialist was called in from Las Vegas, arriving by mid-afternoon with specialized equipment. The technician worked methodically, applying filters and enhancement algorithms to extract whatever information the reflection might hold. "This is the best I can do," she finally announced, revealing a slightly clearer image showing the vague contours of a bearded man wearing a wide-brimmed hat. His face remained mostly indistinct, but his presence was undeniable. Williams took the enhanced image to interview visitor center staff. When he showed it to Diane Martinez, her eyes widened with recognition. "That looks like Jackson Mercer," she said immediately. "He's not an official employee, but he's always hanging around talking to tourists about off-trail locations. Management has warned him several times about recommending unauthorized routes." Williams pulled up Mercer's information in the park database. "Does he work as an unofficial guide?" Diane nodded. "He calls himself a desert consultant. He approaches tourists who seem interested in more adventurous experiences." By sunset, Williams and a deputy were driving down a dusty dirt road toward a small trailer located on the outskirts of the park. A hand-painted wooden sign at the entrance read, "Desert Guide, Consultations by Donation." Jackson Mercer sat in a canvas chair outside his trailer, his skin deeply tanned and weathered from years in the desert sun. His gray beard reached midway down his chest, and he eyed the approaching law enforcement vehicle with visible suspicion. "Jackson Mercer?" Williams approached, badge in hand. "I'm Sergeant Williams with Inyo County Sheriff's Department. We'd like to ask you a few questions about a missing couple." Mercer shifted in his seat, defensive posture immediately apparent. "I talk to dozens of tourists every day. Can't keep track of all of them." Williams showed him the photographs of Lauren and Tyler. Mercer's eyes betrayed a flash of recognition before he carefully composed his expression. "Oh yeah, the couple from Minneapolis," he said casually. "Friendly folks. Mentioned some less visited places to them. Nothing unusual about that." Later that evening, Michael confronted Mercer directly, holding up the enhanced photo. "You're in this image. What else aren't you telling us?" Mercer's confidence faltered. "Look, I just gave them some tips about the grotto and Coffin Canyon, beautiful spots that aren't on the tourist maps. I didn't do anything wrong." Back at the sheriff's office, Williams discovered troubling information in past records. Mercer has a history, he told Michael, scrolling through database entries. In 2002, a couple followed his directions and got trapped in a canyon for 36 hours before being rescued. The Park Service issued him a warning then. That night, Michael's phone conversation with Sarah was interrupted by Abby's crying in the background. "She has nightmares every night, Michael," Sarah said, exhaustion evident in her voice. "She keeps asking why you abandoned her too." Michael closed his eyes, the weight of competing responsibilities crushing him. "I'll call her before bedtime tomorrow, I promise." The next morning, a volunteer at the visitor center made a crucial discovery in the registration book. On the day of their disappearance, Lauren had written, "Coffin Canyon, Natural Spring, Trail recommended by J.M." This entry prompted Williams to organize a focused search of the Coffin Canyon area. Chief Ranger Torres spread detailed topographical maps on the hood of his vehicle, pointing out potential hazards. "There are dozens of unmapped secondary canyons in this area," Torres explained, "some so narrow that a person can barely squeeze through. If they went off trail based on Mercer's recommendation, they could be anywhere in this 10-square-mile section." That evening, Patricia walked with Michael along the ridge overlooking the search area, the setting sun casting long shadows across the barren landscape. "Tyler trusted people too easily," she said softly. "If someone suggested an uncommon adventure, he probably jumped at it without questioning much. Lauren was usually the cautious one, but for their anniversary..." Her voice trailed off. Alone in his hotel room later, Michael scrolled through photos of Abby on his phone, tears silently tracking down his weathered face as he listened to a voicemail message from his granddaughter. "Grandpa, when are you coming home? I need you." The search team gathered at dawn, now reduced to just 10 dedicated volunteers. Williams pointed to a specific section on the map. "Today we'll focus on the area Mercer indicated as the possible location of the natural spring." After a 2-hour hike through increasingly difficult terrain, the team reached the entrance of a narrow, unmapped canyon near Coffin Canyon. The passage was barely visible, a slim crack between towering rock walls that would be easy to miss without specific directions. One of the volunteers, a retired geology professor, called out as he examined the ground near the entrance. "I found something." Michael rushed over as the man carefully extracted a small, colorful object partially buried in the sand. The faded threads were almost invisible against the desert floor, but Michael recognized it instantly, part of the friendship bracelet Abby had made for Lauren on the morning of their departure. "It's part of Lauren's bracelet," Michael whispered, his voice catching as he carefully took the colorful threads from the volunteer's outstretched hand. The faded fibers were unmistakable, the same pattern and colors as the friendship bracelet Abby had made for her mother. Sergeant Williams immediately called for evidence collection equipment. A forensic technician arrived within the hour, carefully photographing and collecting the fragment. The discovery electrified the search team, bringing renewed purpose to their efforts after days of disappointment. Back at the makeshift lab set up in a Park Service building, the technician compared the bracelet fragment to enlarged photos of Lauren's wrist from their last images. "The pattern matches perfectly," she confirmed, pointing to the distinctive sequence of colors. "This is definitely from the same bracelet she was wearing in those final photos." The discovery transformed the nature of the search. Williams immediately reassigned teams to focus intensively on the narrow canyon and surrounding areas. A specialized canyon rescue team arrived the next morning with ropes, harnesses, and communication equipment designed for the treacherous terrain. "Some of these passages are barely 18 inches wide," explained the rescue team leader as they prepared to enter. "We'll need to remove our gear in sections to squeeze through the narrowest parts." Chief Ranger Torres gathered the search team for a briefing on the geology of the area. "These secondary canyons can become deadly traps," he warned, pointing to the steep walls on his topographical map. "A storm miles away can send a wall of water through these passages with no warning. If they got caught in a flash flood..." He left the sentence unfinished, but everyone understood the implication. In Minneapolis, Sarah received a phone call from Abby's preschool director. "Mrs. Donahue, "We had an incident today during our Father's Day activity," the director explained gently. Abby had an emotional breakdown when the other children were making cards. She refused to participate and became quite upset. That evening, Sarah found Abby curled in the corner of her bedroom, clutching her growing collection of colorful stones, tears streaming down her face. "You said they were coming back," the child screamed when Sarah tried to comfort her. "You lied. Everyone lies." Sarah called Michael that night, her exhaustion and desperation evident even through the phone. "I can't do this alone anymore, Michael," she sobbed. "She needs you. I need you. It's been almost 2 weeks and I understand what you're doing, but Abby is falling apart." The competing responsibilities tore at Michael's heart. His military training had taught him never to abandon a mission, but his granddaughter's suffering was a wound that cut deeper than any he'd experienced. The next morning, Michael stood at Las Vegas airport, reluctantly saying goodbye to Williams and Patricia. "Keep searching," he instructed, handing Patricia his meticulously organized notebooks. "Any news, no matter what time, call me immediately." Patricia had transformed over the past 2 weeks, her grief channeling into unexpected strength. "We won't stop looking, Michael," she promised. "Tyler and Lauren are out there somewhere." When Michael arrived at the Minneapolis house, Abby initially refused to look at him, her small back turned rigidly as Sarah ushered him inside. Then suddenly, the child spun around and ran to him, collapsing into his arms with gut-wrenching sobs. "Are you going away again like Mommy and Daddy?" That night, Michael found Abby sleeping in Lauren and Tyler's bed, clutching one of her mother's t-shirts. The room remained exactly as Lauren had left it, a book still open on the nightstand, a pair of running shoes neatly placed by the closet. Time had stopped in this space, waiting for its owners to return. Dr. Elena Patel, a child psychologist, met with Michael and Sarah the following day. "Abby is in emotional limbo," she explained carefully. "Without closure, her brain can't properly process grief. Children need concrete explanations, even difficult ones." Each night after Abby went to sleep, Michael retreated to the basement, converting a corner into an operations center, similar to what he'd established in Death Valley. He coordinated remotely with Patricia via video calls, mapping search areas and analyzing new information. Patricia had unexpectedly stepped into a leadership role with the remaining volunteers, her suburban mother persona transformed by crisis. "Michael trusts us to continue," she told the small group of dedicated searchers, marking areas on a map. "We won't let him down." 15 days after the disappearance, Michael watched a weather report showing violent storms sweeping through Death Valley. The television showed dramatic footage of flash flooding and reports of dangerous landslides in remote areas of the park. His phone rang immediately after the broadcast. It was Williams, his voice urgent. "The storm caused a significant landslide in the canyon area. We found something you need to see in person." Michael's hands trembled as he ended the call, looking down at Abby sleeping with her head on his lap. The weight of the impossible decision pressed on him like a physical force. How could he leave her again after promising to stay? How could he not go when Lauren might be found? His phone vibrated with an incoming message from Williams, a photo of a backpack partially exposed by the landslide, unmistakably the same one Lauren carried in their last photos, with a small colorful stone tied to the zipper, exactly like the one Abby had asked her mother to bring back for her collection. Michael stared at the photo on his phone, his heart hammering against his ribs. Lauren's backpack, unmistakable with Abby's colorful stone tied to the zipper, partially uncovered by the landslide. The evidence was irrefutable. Carefully shifting Abby's sleeping head from his lap to a cushion, he made the hardest phone call of his life. "Sarah, I have to go back," he whispered into the phone from the kitchen. "They've found Lauren's backpack." The flight to Las Vegas the next morning was filled with agonizing guilt. Abby's tearful goodbye replayed in his mind, her small hands clutching his shirt, her voice breaking as he promised once more to return with answers about her parents. "I'll bring back the truth about Mommy and Daddy," he'd told her, kneeling to meet her eyes. "And then, I won't leave you again." From the helicopter window, Michael surveyed the transformed landscape of Death Valley. The recent storm had carved new channels through the ancient terrain, exposing layers of rock and soil that had been hidden for centuries. Williams pointed toward a sectioned-off area marked with orange tape where a team worked carefully around the landslide. "We've established a full perimeter," Williams explained as they landed. "Forensic team arrived this morning from Las Vegas." At the site, Michael watched with held breath as rescuers methodically removed rocks and sediment from around the partially exposed backpack. A technician used small brushes to preserve any trace evidence that might be found in the surrounding soil. When the backpack was finally extracted, Michael instantly recognized the faded Minnesota Trekkers sticker Lauren had applied years ago after their hiking trip to the Boundary Waters. The pack was remarkably intact, protected by the compacted soil that had entombed it. At a makeshift examination table, a forensic investigator carefully opened the pack, documenting each item as it was removed: an empty water bottle, sunscreen, several unopened energy bars, and an intact first aid kit. Michael watched intently, hope and dread battling within him. "There's something else here," the investigator said, extracting a waterproof notebook. Michael's breath caught as he recognized the distinctive green Rite in the Rain brand that Lauren always used on their adventures. The first page bore her characteristic handwriting: "Adventure Journal, Death Valley, July 2008. Williams and Patricia joined Michael as he carefully turned the pages, his fingers trembling. "Day 2. Tyler is fascinated with the rock formations," he read aloud. "The trail Jackson mentioned is difficult to find, but promises a spectacular view and a natural spring." Page after page documented their journey until they reached the final entry dated July 17th. "Found the spring. It's amazing how much life exists around it. A true oasis. Tyler is taking photos to show Abby how water creates." The entry ended abruptly, the pen mark trailing off as if Lauren had been interrupted mid-sentence. A team of geologists examined the newly exposed fissure in the canyon wall, one of them shining a powerful flashlight into the darkness. "This appears to be a passage to a chamber or area of the canyon that was previously blocked," she explained. "The landslide may have exposed something that's been inaccessible for years." Back at Furnace Creek, Jackson Mercer faced more intense questioning. Confronted with the evidence of Lauren's journal entry specifically mentioning his directions, his composure finally cracked. "Okay, I gave them specific instructions about finding the spring in Coffin Canyon," he admitted, nervously twisting his hands. "It's a special place I don't show to just anyone, but I swear I didn't go with them." A specialized canyon rescue team prepared their equipment the next morning: climbing gear, helmets with mounted lights, and communication systems designed to work in narrow passages. "We'll go in teams of 2, the team leader instructed. "Maintain constant communication. This area could be extremely unstable after the landslide." That evening, Patricia sat alone in her rented room, engaged in a personal ritual she'd developed over the past weeks. She lit a candle and placed Tyler's photograph beside it, whispering softly, "I'm beginning to feel you're trying to tell me something, son." Michael found her like this when he came to discuss the next day's search plans. Her calmness frustrated him. "How can you sit here so peacefully when we've just found proof they were alive and well on that date?" he demanded. "They could be waiting for rescue at this very moment." Patricia's response came with surprising serenity. "Don't mistake peace for giving up, Michael. I spent months angry and desperate. Now I'm open to whatever truth this desert wants to reveal." At dawn, the specialized team prepared to enter the narrow fissure exposed by the landslide. Despite strong objections from the professional rescuers, Michael insisted on accompanying them. "My daughter might be in there," he said firmly, adjusting the helmet they'd reluctantly provided. "I'm not waiting out here." The entrance was barely wide enough for a person to squeeze through. Michael followed the lead rescuer, feeling the rough stones scrape against his shoulders as they inched forward. Their headlamps cast eerie shadows on the ancient rock walls, the air growing cooler and heavier with each step deeper into the mountain. After 20 minutes of careful navigation through the constricted passage, the walls suddenly opened into a larger natural chamber. As the beams from their headlamps swept across the space, everyone froze in absolute shock. On the rock walls, partially preserved from the extreme weather, were dozens of messages written in red lipstick, Lauren's unmistakable handwriting, the most prominent one reading, "Tyler never returned. If anyone finds this, please tell Abby we fought to come home." The messages written in red lipstick covered the chamber walls like a desperate gallery of hope and despair. Michael stood frozen, his headlamp illuminating Lauren's familiar handwriting, each word a testament to her determination to survive and be found. The forensic team worked methodically, photographing each message, using specialized lighting to enhance the faded writing, while Michael absorbed every word, his eyes moving from one message to the next. July 21st, day 5 without Tyler, read one detailed entry. "Water is running out. I tried to follow the same path he took, but it's impossible without equipment. If anyone is searching for us, I can't hear anything." The forensic specialist, a woman named Dr. Reyes, carefully documented the progression of messages. "Based on the preservation state and deterioration patterns of the lipstick, we estimate these were written over approximately 2 weeks, she explained to Williams and Michael. The silica content in the rock and the lack of direct sunlight helped preserve them remarkably well. Michael's attention caught on a message clearly meant specifically for him. "Dad, if you're reading this, know that we didn't give up. Take care of our Abby. Tell her we thought of her every minute." The discovery transformed the search operation. Williams immediately divided the teams into 2 distinct groups, one continuing to investigate the chamber and adjacent areas where Lauren had clearly spent her final days, the other following the probable route Tyler would have attempted to climb out and seek help. Back at the sheriff's office, Williams reviewed documents obtained through a court order about Jackson Mercer's past. Old reports from park rangers revealed that Mercer had been officially warned about taking tourists to the Coffin Canyon area due to known geological instabilities. "You knew that area was dangerous," Williams confronted Mercer during another interview session. "You were officially warned by the Park Service in 2005. Why would you send an unprepared couple there?" Mercer's composure finally shattered. "I just like sharing the secret places of the park," he said, his voice breaking. "I didn't know there would be a landslide. How could I have known?" That evening, Michael video called Abby, his heart breaking at the sight of her hopeful face. She held up a crayon drawing to the camera. "Grandpa, I drew you finding Mommy and Daddy in a cave," she explained proudly. "Are you bringing them home now?" Michael swallowed hard. "We're trying our very best, sweetheart," was all he could manage. The next morning, a specialized climbing team followed the probable route Tyler would have taken, looking for any sign of his passage. The team leader, an experienced search and rescue mountaineer, pointed to marks on the rock face. "Someone tried to climb here without proper equipment," he noted. "See these hand and foot marks? They show desperation, someone using improper technique because they had no choice." While the climbers continued their dangerous ascent, Patricia sat silently in the chamber where Lauren's messages had been found. Unlike Michael's frantic energy, she exhibited a quiet contemplation, gently touching one of the lipstick messages. "She was as strong as you always said, Michael," she whispered. National news vans began arriving at the command center, reporters attempting to interview family members and investigators. Williams established strict boundaries, keeping them away from active search areas. "No cameras in the search zones," he instructed firmly. "No interference with operations." By mid-afternoon, the climbing team reached a rocky plateau above the canyon. Their team leader's voice came through the radio, with grave significance. "Base, we found something. We need the forensic investigator and prepare Mr. Donahue." Michael and Patricia made the difficult climb to the plateau, both physically and emotionally exhausted by the time they reached the site. The climbing team leader guided them to a sheltered area between large boulders, where the forensic investigator was already documenting the scene. The devastating moment came when the investigator showed them what they had found partially hidden beneath rocks: A hiking boot, identical to the one Tyler wore in their last photos, with damage consistent with a severe fall. Michael stared at the boot, reality crashing down upon him. Patricia placed her hand on his shoulder, her eyes filled with tears, but her face showing a resignation that had been building for days. "We need to continue the documentation process," the forensic investigator said gently, "and we'll need to expand the search in this immediate area." As the team worked methodically, documenting the location where the boot was found, one of the forensic technicians called urgently to Williams, pointing to his detection equipment. "Sergeant, we're picking up a strong metallic signal under those rocks," he said, excitement edging his voice. "Based on the configuration, it could be the backup camera they mentioned Tyler was carrying. If we can recover it, we might have his final images." The team worked with delicate precision to recover the metallic object beneath the rocks. Each stone was carefully removed, photographed in place, and set aside as they uncovered what lay beneath. After nearly an hour of meticulous excavation, the backup camera emerged from its rocky tomb, severely damaged, but with its protective case still intact. "The casing did its job," said the forensic technician, as he gently placed the camera in an evidence bag. "There's a good chance the memory card survived." Around the camera, the team made an even more significant discovery: human remains that preliminary examination indicated belonged to Tyler Richards. The medical examiner confirmed what the evidence had already suggested. Tyler had died from traumatic injuries consistent with a fall from a considerable height. Based on the position of the remains and the fracture patterns, the examiner explained quietly to Williams, he likely fell while attempting to climb to a higher position. Death would have been nearly instantaneous. Michael stood a few yards away, his face a mask of grief as he processed this confirmation of his worst fears. Patricia approached him slowly, her eyes red-rimmed but dry. "He was trying to save them both," she said softly. "That was always who Tyler was, putting others first." The camera was carefully packed and handed to an FBI specialist who had arrived specifically to assist with data recovery. "We'll do everything possible to retrieve any images," he assured them. "The memory card appears intact inside its protective compartment, which is a good sign." That evening, Michael faced the daunting task of sharing this news with Abby. He arranged a video call with Dr. Patel and Sarah present to help navigate the conversation. "We need to be honest, but age-appropriate," Dr. Patel advised. "She needs to know the truth about her father, but in a way she can process, and we should be clear that we're still searching for Lauren." When Abby's face appeared on the screen, Michael struggled to maintain his composure. The child's hopeful expression made the task infinitely harder. "Sweetheart," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "We found Daddy. He tried very, very bravely to find help, but there was an accident." Abby's reaction evolved from confusion to silent tears as she processed what her grandfather was telling her. After several moments of silence, she asked in a small voice, "But Mommy could still be waiting for us, right, Grandpa?" The question pierced Michael's heart. "Yes, honey, we're still looking for Mommy." Back in Death Valley, the search for Lauren intensified. An expanded team used advanced ground-penetrating radar and thermal imaging equipment to map potential cavities connected to the chamber where her messages had been found. "These cave systems can have multiple interconnected chambers," explained a geologist consultant. "If she continued exploring after writing these messages, she could have accessed other areas." While the technical aspects of the search continued, Patricia organized a small private ceremony at sunset, creating a modest stone memorial for Tyler on a ridge overlooking the vast expanse of Death Valley. She invited Michael to join her. "He deserves for us to acknowledge his bravery," she said simply, "even as we continue searching for Lauren." Michael hesitated before placing a stone on the small cairn. The finality of the gesture felt overwhelming, yet he knew Patricia was right. They needed this moment of recognition before continuing their search. Meanwhile, in a makeshift lab at the command center, the data recovery technician worked tirelessly with the damaged camera, connecting the memory card to specialized equipment designed to extract data from compromised devices. "I've gained partial access," he announced after several hours of work. "We're recovering the files now." Michael, Patricia, and Williams gathered around the monitor as the first images appeared. Tyler documenting the canyon, Lauren smiling beside a small natural spring, both looking completely carefree, with no idea of what was to come. As more photos loaded, they revealed the progression of events, the couple exploring the area, then images of their path blocked by fallen rocks after the landslide, and their attempts to remove the stones. The final sequence showed Tyler preparing to attempt the climb, Lauren visibly concerned, embracing him before he set off, Tyler pointing to a specific route he intended to follow. The very last image recovered was a selfie Tyler had taken midway through his climb, the sun beginning to set, his face showing determination and fatigue, the camera capturing the precarious height he had reached. "He knew the risk he was taking," Patricia whispered, touching the screen gently, "but he felt he had no choice." Just as they were processing these revelations, the technician made another discovery. "There's an audio file recorded on the camera," he said, clicking on the file. "It appears to be the last thing he recorded before—" He didn't finish the sentence. The room fell silent as Tyler's voice, exhausted but determined, filled the space. "If something happens to me, whoever finds this camera needs to know that Lauren is still alive in the cave below, but there's something else I need to say about what really happened to us." Tyler's voice emerged from the small speaker, crackled and strained but unmistakably his. "The landslide wasn't a natural accident," he continued, each word sending shockwaves through the room. "I noticed tool marks on some of the larger boulders at the top of the slide area. Someone deliberately loosened key rocks to trigger it. I think it was that guide, Jackson Mercer. He seemed too interested in sending us specifically to this canyon, almost insisted on it. I don't know why anyone would do this, but if I don't make it back with help, whoever finds this needs to know Lauren is trapped below. Please save her." The recording ended with the sounds of shifting rocks and Tyler's startled breath. Silence filled the command center as the implications sank in. "This changes everything," Williams said, already reaching for his radio. "This isn't a rescue operation anymore. It's a criminal investigation." Within the hour, Williams had secured an emergency warrant to search Mercer's property. A team of officers converged on the trailer, approaching with tactical caution. Despite the gravity of the situation, Mercer appeared unsurprised when they arrived, almost resigned. "Been wondering when you'd figure it out," he said quietly, as officers handcuffed him. Inside the trailer, investigators discovered a hidden room behind a false wall in the bedroom closet. The space contained meticulously detailed maps of Death Valley, with annotations marking special places that needed protection from tourists. Dozens of journals filled a bookshelf, each documenting Mercer's increasingly fanatical relationship with the desert. Williams flipped through one journal dated from 2 years prior. "The invaders don't understand the sacredness of the desert. Sometimes they need to be taught through the power of Death Valley itself." Other entries detailed previous lessons he had orchestrated for tourists who disrespected what he considered sacred sites. Back at the sheriff's station, Michael confronted Mercer in the interrogation room, barely containing his rage. The older man sat across the table, his weathered face impassive. "You murdered my son-in-law," Michael said, his voice dangerously controlled. "My daughter might be dead because of you. Where is Lauren?" Mercer stared at the table for long moments before responding. "I never meant for anyone to die," he finally said. "I just wanted to scare them, teach them respect. The slide was supposed to be small, just enough to trap them for a few hours, make them appreciate the power of the place." After 6 hours of intensive questioning, Mercer finally broke down completely. "There's another entrance to the cave system," he admitted, sketching a crude map on a piece of paper. "It's how I checked on the results of my lessons." His hand trembled as he marked an X on the eastern side of the canyon. "Your daughter was still alive when I last checked, about 10 days after. I left some water. I thought she'd find her way out eventually." From behind the one-way glass, Patricia watched the confession with horror etched on her face. All those messages Lauren wrote. She was alone for weeks, while this man knew exactly where she was. Armed with Mercer's directions, a specialized cave rescue team assembled with equipment designed for the narrow passages he had described. Despite William's strong objections, Michael insisted on joining them. "I'm not waiting outside this time," he stated firmly, strapping on the helmet they provided. "I've been searching for 15 years. I'll be the one to find her." Outside the park boundaries, news of Mercer's confession had leaked, creating a media frenzy. Journalists clamored for information, setting up a makeshift camp near the visitor center and complicating the logistics of the rescue operation. At dawn the following morning, the rescue team approached the hidden entrance Mercer had identified, a narrow fissure in the eastern canyon wall, partially obscured by desert scrub. The team leader tested the air quality before allowing anyone to enter. "Oxygen levels are good," he reported, "but the passage appears unstable in sections. We'll proceed with extreme caution." One by one, the team members squeezed through the opening, their headlamps creating bouncing beams of light in the darkness beyond. The narrow tunnel required them to crawl in sections, the rough stones scraping against their protective gear. Michael followed determinedly, ignoring the pain in his aging knees as he crawled through the constricted space. "Walls are showing significant stress fractures," the team leader reported through the radio. "Everyone maintain constant communication. If you hear anything shift, freeze immediately." After 20 minutes of careful navigation, the tunnel began to widen, eventually opening into a larger chamber that connected with the area where Lauren's lipstick messages had been discovered days earlier. The team's lights swept systematically across the space, revealing evidence of Lauren's desperate survival efforts: a crude water collection system made from plastic bags, carefully rationed food wrappers, and more messages on the walls. "There's another passage on the far side," one team member called out, pointing to a small opening. "It looks like someone tried to enlarge it." The team carefully made their way to this secondary passage, following what appeared to be deliberate scratch marks on the stone. The passage led to another chamber, smaller than the first, but with higher ceiling. As their lights illuminated the far corner, one of the rescuers stopped suddenly. "Over here," he called. "We found something." In the beam of their headlamps, in the furthest corner of the chamber, they discovered a small encampment of improvised survival materials: Lauren's jacket folded as a pillow, makeshift tools crafted from belt buckles and camera parts, and a careful arrangement of stones marking the days. In the center of this humble space, positioned as if it were the most precious artifact, sat a waterproof journal, different from the first one they had found, with an inscription written in a steady hand on its cover: "For Abby, the complete story of your mother's fight to come back to you." The forensic investigator carefully opened Lauren's final journal with gloved hands, revealing pages filled with remarkably steady handwriting, despite the circumstances of its creation. Michael stood beside him, scarcely breathing as the investigator began to read the first entry aloud. "Day 1 after Tyler left. I keep listening for his return. The echoes in this cave play tricks. Sometimes I think I hear footsteps, only to find myself still alone. I'm rationing the last of our water. If he doesn't return by tomorrow, I'll need to find another source." The journal chronicled Lauren's extraordinary fight for survival. She had discovered small water seeps in the cave walls, creating an ingenious collection system from plastic bags in their emergency kit. She detailed how she stretched their remaining food to its absolute limit, supplementing it with cave insects when desperation set in. Day 14. I've marked possible exits on the cave wall using Tyler's compass directions. Attempted the northwest passage today, but it narrowed too severely. I keep writing messages, hoping someone will find them. I refuse to leave this world without Abby knowing we fought to return to her. As pages turned, Lauren's entries revealed her gradual acceptance of Tyler's fate. Day 23. I know now that Tyler isn't coming back. In the quiet darkness, I sometimes feel his presence. I talk to him and to Abby. It helps maintain my sanity. My body is weakening, but my resolve isn't. The final entry, dated approximately 5 weeks after their disappearance, was a letter addressed directly to Abby. The investigator handed the journal to Michael, recognizing this was something he should read himself. "My beloved Abby," Michael read, his voice breaking. "If you're reading this, know that Mommy and Daddy loved you more than anything in this world. Our greatest adventure went wrong, but we never stopped trying to come home to you. Remember us when you see beautiful sunsets, when you collect pretty stones, when you feel brave enough to try something new. We are with you in all those moments. Be brave, be kind, be curious, just as you always were. My greatest joy was being your mother." After a thorough search of the connected chambers, the team located Lauren's remains in a small alcove adjacent to her camp. Evidence suggested she had survived nearly 6 weeks after the initial landslide, far longer than anyone could have reasonably expected in such conditions. The grim discovery brought a strange mixture of devastation and relief. For Michael, finding Lauren meant the search that had consumed 15 years of his life was finally over. For Patricia, it meant she could at last bring her son and daughter-in-law home. 2 days later, Jackson Mercer was formally charged with 2 counts of involuntary manslaughter, criminal endangerment, and interfering with a national park. As he was led away from his arraignment, reporters shouted questions about his motives. "I was protecting the sacred places," he muttered, his eyes downcast. "They weren't supposed to die." The recovery operation was conducted with solemn dignity. Park rangers and search team members formed an honor guard as Lauren and Tyler's remains were carried from the canyon. Michael and Patricia walked behind, united in grief, but also in the closure they had sought for so long. Back in Minneapolis, Michael and Sarah faced the difficult task of sharing the complete truth with Abby, now 7. They gathered in the living room surrounded by happy family photos, explaining gently what had happened to her parents. "Your mom and dad never stopped trying to come home to you," Michael told her, showing her appropriate portions of the journals and photos of the couple in happier times. "They loved you so much that they wrote all these words just for you." On a bright August morning, Lauren and Tyler Richards were finally laid to rest in Lakewood Cemetery. Hundreds attended the service, including many volunteers who had participated in searches over the years. Abby, with wisdom beyond her years, placed the restored friendship bracelet between the caskets. "You kept your promise," she whispered. "You brought me a pretty stone for my collection." In the years that followed, Michael transformed the Find Lauren and Tyler website into a foundation dedicated to improving search and rescue protocols in national parks. The foundation's work led to enhanced emergency response systems and visitor education programs that saved countless lives. Patricia remained in Furnace Creek, finding purpose in giving desert safety lectures to park visitors. Her first-hand knowledge of the tragedy gave her words particular weight, and rangers noted a significant decrease in off-trail incidents in the years following her involvement. As Abby grew into adolescence, she began studying her mother's journals in their entirety, discovering aspects of Lauren she had never known: her humor, her determination, her endless love for her family. These words became a bridge across time, allowing Abby to know the woman who had given her life. 15 years after the discovery, 20-year-old Abby Richards stood in the Death Valley Visitor Center studying the memorial dedicated to her parents. Now a geology student herself, she had returned to understand the place that had shaped her life so profoundly. Later that day, Abby led a small group of fellow students through Richards Canyon, officially named by the National Park Service in honor of her parents. As the sun began to set, she separated from the group and made her way to Zabriskie Point, the exact spot where the last known photo of her parents had been taken. Against the canvas of orange and gold painted across the desert sky, Abby placed 2 colored stones from her childhood collection. The geology student in her understood the formations that had claimed her parents' lives. The daughter in her had finally found peace. As Abby watched the sun setting over Death Valley, she opened her geology field notebook and began to write, her first words echoing her mother's from 15 years before. "Even in the most desolate place, we find beauty. Even in the darkest hour, we find hope. And perhaps this is the true power of the desert. It takes, but it also gives. And today, finally, I feel I've found my way home.